Now we're spot on time. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming this evening. So this is an opportunity for a number of people to obviously see our premises for the first time, but more importantly, because this is the first event we've had here that's actually just had permission to fundamentally open this up. And as a number of you may know, we have teaching facilities across at the National Library. We're on the 13th floor of the National Library. And then when it comes to our partner programs with the PSB and the BCA Academy, then we actually teach those programs at their premises, either in Marina Square or at the BCA Academy itself. So tonight's topic is educating for the future. We've got 4 presenters. We've got one here in person, Kristen, who's the head professor and head of psychological sciences. And then we have 3 who Julia will present the details on. But I feel as if I have to turn around and actually physically see who they are. But Paolucci, Professor Francesco Paolucci will be talking in the health economics area. We've got Carl, who's special education, inclusive education, experienced school teacher who's come to academia late, and that's one of our very successful programs. We started that program with 17 students. And then Karen Blackmore for our Master of Information Technology, but they'll be broadly talking about the developments in these areas. So that's where I'll stop, and I'll hand over to Julie to individually introduce that in more detail. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Tony. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Julia Connell. I'm the Academic Director here, and we're delighted to see you tonight. Thank you for coming. And I just want to point out that our presenters in Australia, it's actually 9 o'clock at night, so that's how dedicated and passionate they are to join us at that time. So I'm just looking today because we call this Educating for the Future, and as you've probably seen, a lot of the research that we're talking about how many careers we will have and the changes we'll have in the future, how many jobs we'll have, and we don't really know. It's very difficult to predict. So all we can do is try and build ourselves up with the skills and competences that we need, and that's what these programs are really about. So we're delighted to have launched these programs. The Master of Health Economics will launch in January, but the other programs we've launched already, and very happy with the way they're progressing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and this is Associate Professor Karen Blackmore, and you can see the photo there, and here she is in person. And just in terms of her bio, so Karen is driven by problem solving. She's always looking towards an innovative solution to society's issues. And one of the key areas she's currently working on is simulation and virtual reality for training, and particularly with defence. So Karen's working to use artificial intelligence and immersive technologies to develop adaptive training environments that improve decision-making and performance in applications such as the United Nations peacekeeping, army medical training, and border security. Until very recently, I think it's about a week ago, Karen, she was a program convener for the Master of Information Technology. She's just passing over to someone else, but she's just taken on another senior role, but she's had a very big role in developing the program and making it what it is today. So Karen's going to share with us tonight her thoughts on why studying in this program, the Master of Information Technology, can set you up for an education for the future. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you everyone for having me along. Yes, it is 9 o'clock at night here in Australia, and I must admit I am a bit of a early to bed person. So, but I'm really pleased to be able to join you tonight and also to talk about this particular topic. It's something I'm very passionate about. Something another role I have with the university is I'm the Assistant Dean for Work Integrated Learning for the College of Engineering, Science and Environment. And so in that role, I spend a lot of time working and talking with industry, particularly members of industry who are noting their skill shortages and gaps, thinking about workforce planning and particularly in those skill areas that come from our college, which include those that are covered within our Master of IT. So what we're seeing is our business sector, our industry sector, starting to really transition in the ways that we use technology. And the slide here I have is with regard to Industry 4.0, and I'm sure you've all heard of this particular term. But what characterized Industry 4.0 was really a large increase in the use of technology across all of our industry sectors. So we came out of the industrial age where we were really good at using machines to make things, but there was a lot of human labor involved. And as we transition through now into Industry 4.0, and you start to look at the kinds of technologies that underpin Industry 4.0, and we see things like the Internet of Things, simulation, where we've got in there augmented and virtual reality where I am, robotics, we're talking about different kinds of horizontal and vertical integrations in the way we operationalize our business systems, cybersecurity, cloud computing, big data and analytics. And for those that have looked at our Master of IT program, hopefully you'll notice some of those words that I've discussed there are courses and topics that you'll study within a Master of IT. What it means, though, from a workforce is that rather than having people that are working with large machines, we now have technologies that are automating a lot of our processes. They're integrating the systems and technologies, and we need a skilled workforce to enable that to happen. If we can move across to the next slide, this slide here, and apologies, I can't see it in the room. It is actually, there's a lot of information on there for you, and it comes from the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs Survey, which is recent. The 2023 version was recently released. I'd encourage everyone to have a look at it. It makes for some really interesting reading around where we're seeing technology adoption go in this future 4-year time horizon, and what impact that's going to have on the types of jobs that are available and the types of skills that people need to be successful in their careers. As you can see, this, sorry, if you could just go back for a minute. Thank you, Jason. Top of the list, there are things like digital platforms and apps. We're really engaging with technology, and we need skilled people to be able to deliver those. But even within something like a Master of Information Technology, having the technical skills also allows you to make really smart business decisions when it comes time to acquire or integrate software systems. If we look down that list too, you'll see things, big data analytics. So these are the technologies ranked by the share of organisations that were surveyed. And they're what organisations are telling us that they are likely or highly likely to adopt over the next 5 years. So what that should signal to you is that these are the areas, these are those technologies, the individuals who have the skills to contribute to either the development of those or the implementation within organisations. They're the really important skills that we need to be thinking about now and into the future. Thank you, Jason. And so the last little point that I have here, because I am trying to stick to everyone's time boundaries for us tonight, is artificial intelligence. And I can see the room on a small thing, but can I just have a quick show of hands in the room? Who has had a try of ChatGPT? I'm seeing some hands going up. I'm going to put my hand up for that one. 2. And if you have had a try of ChatGPT, now so ChatGPT is a type of artificial intelligence. It's a natural language processing system. And if you have worked with ChatGPT, you'll understand just how game-changing, really, artificial intelligence and particularly the family of natural language processing algorithms are, and the potential implications this will have for the workforce. Now, this particular quote actually comes from the 2020 Future of Jobs report. You'll be pleased to know that the predictions from the 2020 report were only differed by 1%. We're not moving as fast as we predicted, but we're still moving in exactly the direction that the jobs of the Future of Jobs reports predict. And you'll notice there that AI is expected to replace 85 million jobs worldwide in the coming years. But interestingly, when we look at this, what we do find is that the predictions are that there'll be more jobs created than there will be jobs lost to AI. And the reason that is because these technologies need a really skilled workforce to develop them. They need a really skilled workforce in order to be able to use them effectively. And I must admit, even through my my tinkering, if you like, with ChatGPT, you'll start to notice that you can see opportunities, applications for it, but working out how to do that effectively takes some time, effort, and work. And if we think about across organizations, how we can take those types of advances and then use them to change our work practices, all of those things will rely on a really skilled workforce, the kind that we get from the skills from the Master of Information Technology. Jason, if you could just move on to my last slide. Thank you. So this comes straight from our website, but it just covers some of the areas that you will study with Master of Information Technology. And so I just wanted to mention that there is a pathway through. If you have previously studied computing or IT programs, there's a pathway through our Master of IT for you if that is your background. But if you have studied business or your experiences come from areas out of computing, the Master of IT is really purposefully designed for you. It assumes and provides courses that will develop those skills. The really critical ones around being able to process data, being able to analyze big data sets are all covered within the Master of IT, as well as programming, business analytics, and also how we store and organize data through databases. So there is a lot of the skills that I've spoken to are around from those jobs of the future are specifically delivered within our IT program. And I think I have kept myself pretty close to time. Thank you, Julia.
You have, Karen. Thank you so much. And you will be getting an opportunity for a question and answer. We've just given each speaker 7 to 8 minutes, and fantastic time. And thank you so much, Karen Blackmore. And so we're having a change now to a different program, which is the Master of Special and Inclusive Education. And our next speaker is Dr. Carl Leonard. And Carl is an educational scholar and practitioner. He's got 31 years experience in schools, and it's mostly in leadership and or consultancy positions, holding key roles related to advocacy and support for students with disability, promoting inclusive practice and leading policy implementation, with his belief that access to quality learning should be the right of all students, regardless of their socioeconomic status, ability or location. So welcome, Carl, and I think we've got some students from the class, haven't we? Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Karen. So I think one of the jobs that's supposed to be most likely to survive the AI onslaught is hairdressing. So I conversely get my hair done by AI, as you can probably tell. So I might need to regress a little bit in that space. Lovely to be with you, everyone. This is a really important topic to me as well. And look, whilst I've been in school, was in schools for 31 years, I've also worked at the uni for 23 years, and it's something that I tried to model for a whole long time, which was being beyond a research engaged teacher, and that was being a research active practitioner. And so I should say too, I'm an insomniac, so we're in my prime time now. So it's how I got my PhD. So I worked full time while I was doing my PhD, and get home from school, make some dinner, bath the kids, read the bedtime story, put them to bed, and then start on my PhD. It wasn't the most romantic lifestyle, but certainly was a very productive one. So I think that mindset around being a research active practitioner, a mindset of critical reflection and transformative practice, that is the type of worker that's making a difference, particularly in the education sector. I think more importantly, is what brings the fun and enjoyment to our work. That future, I think, for me, seemed a long way off when I felt like I was bashing my head against that brick wall, trying to work in academia and work in schools at the same time. But that future is right here with us now. Next slide, please, Jason. So you might be aware, but our program has over postgrad programs, especially inclusive ed, has over 500 students in the programs. I try to think what that's about or reflect on what that's about a whole lot. And I think it is in a post-truth era that we all live now. Working with disability remains a real truth. It remains important work. It's work where we can make a difference. I think in the Singapore context, it's powerful and timely, and we'll see in my presentation today, I think what we're trying to offer here in terms of a program fits really nicely in where Singapore wants to be as a society in the future. That picture there is of our first cohort. We took a little excursion as part of our program out to one of your fantastic lighthouse schools, the Winstead schools, for their fake day, and we had an amazing day out there. So I do want you to think that what we're doing here is learning, but we're also having fun learning along the way as well. Thank you, Jason. Next slide, please. So I think one of our big focuses in that regard in the program is building a community of practice focused on inclusion in Singapore. We've already had some nice lunches together, as you can see from the picture there. But I think, again, focusing on that beyond study element of what we're doing here, we're creating a professional network. It's also a friendship group. What we hope it to be is an advocacy group for people with disability. And we really want to have a voice and some influence in what happens in Singapore in terms of disability and inclusion. Next slide, please, Jason. So look, we have just quickly in terms of the program structure, we've got a full-time option and part-time options as well. So we can really there's options within the program to align the amount of study you do with your work and lifestyle choices. So we also have a range of delivery options that hopefully give you a whole lot of flexibility about how you access the program, so you can do it at a rate that works for you and still allows you to balance all the other elements of your lifestyle. So we certainly have a commitment to your well-being, and I think it's a really important part of futures education moving forward. Next slide. Thank you, Jason. So in terms of education futures, the program, just quickly on how it's structured, the core elements of the program around building your knowledge, building your pedagogy, and helping you to create research-informed practice. So again, I think that research mindset is a really important part of working in this sector and delivering this sector as we move forward. Next slide. Thank you, Jason. The compulsory and directed courses within the program are really about broadening your skill set and capacity. And the vision that we have and the feedback that we've gotten from students so far, they've been really surprised by how contextual the program is with regard to what's happening in Singapore. But that's always the way that we envisaged it. And it's not for me to comment on other institutions' programs, but we're really interested in creating a brighter future for Singapore. And so our program strongly aligns and embedded in two perspectives. One is the Singapore perspective, and it's the global perspective on inclusion and disability support. So we're really proud that we're offering you a meaningful, tangible program. Next slide. Thank you, Jason. So look, in terms of work-ready graduates, and Karen touched on that, I'd argue what we're about is creating future-ready graduates, and that is certainly being part of Singapore's enabling future. And you may just happily, but very timely, you may be aware that there's an enabling master plan that's being created for Singapore, and it has a vision for a future of what Singapore will look like in 2030, and a whole lot of recommendations around inclusion and disability support. And that plan has been created from the thoughts, the ideas, the hopes, the visions of people with disabilities and their families. And the government set a whole lot of targets around that. What's potentially missing at the moment, or the part that we hope to play in that education futures, is creating the workforce, the personnel, the leaders who can inform that plan to reach towards those targets. So it's a little video presentation here about that enabling master plan. If you play that now, Jason, that'd be great.
In 2030, I hope
In 2030, I hope to see Singapore becoming more inclusive and accessible for blind individuals like me.
In 2030, I look forward to Singapore having a special needs village, a village where special needs people can play and live in.
In 2030, I hope to see the removal of communication barriers for deaf and hard of hearing persons to be more included.
In 2030, I hope to see more McDonald's support catered for persons with disabilities, especially those with incurable chronic illnesses or long-term medical conditions like me.
In 2030, I hope that there will be more public spaces and community events where my child with autism can have more opportunities to be himself.
In 2030, I hope that there will be more inclusive employers so that people with disabilities can not only get a job but retain their job.
In 2030, I hope Singapore will be a more inclusive society where people with disabilities are given equal opportunities and can lead fulfilling lives.
So in 2030, I hope to see an integrated delivery of services across healthcare, education, employment that includes and supports persons with disabilities within the mainstream services in Singapore.
In 2030, I will be 30,000, and I want to see an inclusive Singapore where people with disability, can work, live, and play happily together.
In 2030.
So the wonderful thing I feel is the education future for Singapore has been written. It's been written in the stars. It is an incredibly aspirational document, and it's something that we can collectively work towards. I can't express what a privilege it was to come and work with the group that I've worked with so far in Singapore. The capacity of the students we currently have in the program, their desire to make a difference across the broadest range of sectors in terms of inclusive practice in Singapore was overwhelming and powerful. The colleagues who are in the room there who've already started in the program, I really encourage you to talk to them about what we started and what we're creating. I don't want you to think about this as just a place to come and be educated. It's about the sharing, it's about the collegiality, it's about the networking, it's about what we can collectively do as a group to support the education future in Singapore around disability and inclusion. I could not be more excited. I cannot wait to come back to Singapore to work with the group again. I do think, it's timely. It's this perfect situation where we have the opportunity to make a real difference in an incredibly important field. So that's about it from me. Other than we do have some scholarships available, so please do talk to our Singapore team about those opportunities. We'd love you to join us in creating the future for Singapore.
Thank you so much, Carl. And I should point out that we actually have the same scholarships for all of the programs that we're talking about tonight. It's not just for that particular one. So moving on to now, my colleague Francesco Paolucci is a professor and scholar and advisor in health economics and policy at both the University of Newcastle and University of Bologna in Italy. His work for government and industry has been translated into policies and reforms which have transformed healthcare systems by making them more accessible and efficient across a number of countries. So Francesco has brought his expertise to the creation of the Master of Health Economics and Policy, which has found great success in its inception in Australia. And we're delighted to announce that this program will be commencing in Singapore in January 2024. So healthcare, as you know, similar to the other programs we've been hearing about, is key to the Singapore government strategy. And Francesco will be sharing with us now how the MHEMP, as we call it for short, can assist with strengthening this strategy going forward. So over to you, Francesco.
Thank you, Julia. I hope you hear me all right. Good evening to all those, to those of you that are here in Australia, or good night, and good day to all of you in Singapore. Also, thank you, Tony and the team who I have had the pleasure to meet in previous visits, and I'm delighted to be here with you today to talk about this program and the fact that in fact that we have decided, of course, to launch it in Singapore. As Julia said, this is a program that is designed to really address not only the challenges but the opportunities that the healthcare industry is providing us globally. Of course, we all know what happened for a number of years. We have experienced COVID. The pandemic has certainly made us more aware about the importance of health and also healthcare responses to global crises. Obviously, what has been emerging from that is a basic fundamental need for skills at the global level that are in fact capable of providing responses in a fast and multi-skill manner to these crises. And this is a reality that's been not really new for those who work in the sector for a number of years. In fact, many trends, international and national, have suggested that healthcare industry, which is the largest in developed and growing economies globally, is also the fastest growing, but also the one that has most need for business acumen and really business knowledge. In fact, the vast majority of the healthcare industry practitioners that run hospitals, run healthcare organizations more broadly, but also run working governments to understand and design policy, lack knowledge and background in business and policy disciplines. In some countries, this, let's say, gap is touching over 70% of the workforce in all the micro industries in this sector, from the pharmaceutical to the health insurance, the medical device industry. So when you have to think about what I can do with the programs in health economics, management, and policies, really develop the multi-skills that allow you to really respond to that gap. Now, what we do in the master and why to study this master is really to appreciate the multidisciplinary approach, which takes not only business as the foundation for administrative and policy practices, but also the legal and economic and social challenges that are faced by healthcare systems globally. And clearly Singapore, which has always been at the forefront of policy innovation, has faced tremendous challenges like everyone else during the last years. And in fact, our program is trying to respond to that by interacting with local partners and industry to really think about the concrete problems on the ground and find long-term solutions to help a development of a workforce that is not only able to manage and administer, but also to think strategically and prevent the emergence of a future crisis. Obviously, what we offer, and this relates a little bit to what Karen was discussing in the beginning with the Master of IT. We collaborate with the School of Data Science in one particular area of specialty where we really try and focus on the needs from an analytical perspective when it comes, in fact, to specializing in the fastest growing aspect in the healthcare sector, which is predictive modeling and understanding future trends in healthcare and healthcare needs. Next, please. So what are the key characteristics of our approach? So we are industry relevant. That means that our classes are participated and taught directly by industry leaders. And that means leaders that practice in the local context here in Australia or in the Singapore context, but also a strong international faculty contribution, which is a direct implication of our work with the Value in Health Economics and Policy Group, which is really a collective of practitioners that work globally in healthcare economics, management, and policy. We offer flexible teaching format with a mix of intensive classes and standard teaching periods. We have decided to have three main areas of focus: management and leadership, analytics and informatics, and economics and policy. And we also believe that it's quite important to construct classes that allow our students to work together and interact between each other, but also with our industry. Next. Now, we have spent quite a lot of time in developing also opportunities for our graduates and also students that participate through our accreditation, not only through the business school, which is double accredited, but also through our programs, which in fact are accredited by two important Australasian institutions, the Australasian College of Healthcare Managers and also the Royal College for Administrators in Healthcare. So that is very important for our students because they also have access to the benefits that these accredited institutions give. And it's quite important to recognize that this is the only program really in the region that allows such a great depth and variety of accreditations. Next, please. Now, what we offer in the Singapore context is fundamentally two products. One is a shorter product, the Graduate Certificate in Health Economics, Management and Policy, which can be completed in 2 trimesters, also part-time, and of course the Master in Health Economics, Management and Policy, which is longer, 1.5 years, and also can be completed part-time. Next, please. Now, these are just some examples of our industry speakers and people that dedicate their time. And I just selected a few that really represent our industry locally and internationally. And these are the people that will interact with us in our classes. Thank you. If you have any questions, of course, I'm more than happy to answer now or later when there will be an opportunity.
Thank you so much, Francesco. So last but definitely not least, then we're moving to our Master of Business Psychology program, and we're fortunate to have Professor Kristen Pammer here in person. And Kristen is the head of the School of Psychological Science at the University of Newcastle, and she's got qualifications in science, psychology, I don't know if I'm saying this right, neuroanatomy, focusing on issues such as attentional allocation in driving, reading, and dyslexia. She's been a great champion of the Master of Business Psychology since the program commenced in Singapore in September 2022. And student numbers have been growing steadily since then, and results have been great from our students. And really, in the last cohort, we actually had a student here in Singapore who's also a working full-time mother who actually topped one of the classes across Australia and Singapore, didn't she? Which was pretty amazing. So given the amount of global disruption we've experienced over the past few years, as referred to by COVID with, Francesco, with COVID, working from home, increased issues relating to mental health, and more, Kristen's going to share with us now why studying for the MVP, as we call it for short, will assist those of you who are interested in improving your knowledge in these particular areas. Welcome, Kristen.
Thanks, brilliant. I can't say the chances of me sticking to 7 minutes sleep, but we'll give it a go. And I'm just going to brag my colleagues at home that it's 29 degrees here. It's 9 degrees at home. I just looked at my phone, so just saying. Anyway, look, so businesses have changed. Organisations have changed. The organisations that we're running now are miles different from what they were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. Who'd have thought just a few years ago that our workforce would be sitting in their living rooms doing their jobs from bed? No, nobody really did that, did they? Everybody was actually sitting in their living rooms. The way that we understand organisations have changed, and the thing that's going to make into the future the most important part of all of those organisations to cope with those changes is understanding the workforce, is understanding the people that are associated with those organisations. So psychology is at the heart of every big issue that exists across the country, across the world. It doesn't matter whether or not we're talking about, of course it's running low. Sorry, it's coming up with the batteries running low. Doesn't matter whether or not we're talking about war or famine or prejudice or drug addiction or all of these big issues across the globe have human behaviour at their core. How we interact as human beings. And Karen, I guarantee that AI is not going to take over our ability to understand each other, to understand the human psyche. So business psychology is what the future is when it comes to business and organisations. So understanding the human being, the individual, the psychology that sits within businesses and organisations. So what is business psychology? It's not occupational health and resources. That's something quite different. It's also not therapy in a business setting. So we're not clinical psychologists in business settings. What business psychologists do is that they understand the factors that are associated with the people that are in those organisations. The underlying assumption in business psychology is the individual is the most important part of your organisation, the most important part of your business, and understanding the person or the individual within your business is what is going to help your business to succeed. And that's what business psychologists do. So they're interested in how do we make the most effective use of the people within an organisation? How do we make sure that people are happy, that they're engaged, and they're productive? We engage in evidence-based practice. We do research to understand the role of the individual within your organisations in order to create high-performing organisations. Do I just keep going? I'm just going to keep going. What's on here is quite different to what's happening out here, can I just say? That's why it's slightly off-putting. So, but why is business psychology important now? Why is business psychology important into the future? It's because of all the things that are changing, all what I said earlier. Things like competition. Competition is so important in organisations and businesses. It always has been, but even more so now. It doesn't matter what business you're in, there is an enormous amount of competition. So understanding how do we get the best people into our organisations to remain competitive? How do we keep those best people in organisations to remain competitive? As I said right at the very beginning, our organisations are changing so fast. They're changing almost on a weekly, monthly, certainly a yearly basis. It's one of the beautiful things is the ability for an organisation to change. We've stuck. Maybe we do it this one. Okay, there we go. We're back again. How do we manage a remote workforce? How do we manage people who are not physically on the ground but working from home? How do we attract and keep talent? How do we maintain productivity when there's supply chain issues, for example? Increasing automation, Karen. How does the individual cope with that? We talk a lot about AI, and Karen's absolutely right. AI is the future of organisations. But what is the role of the individual in AI? What is going to be the role of the person in AI? How are we going to interact with AI? So navigating all of that is all psychology. That's all about understanding the person in the organisation. So what are the sorts of things that that you're going to need to know going forward? Things like soft skills. And what are soft skills? They're not the hard skills. The hard skills are the skill that you need to get that job. So if you're a surgeon, being able to do surgeon stuff. If you're a coder, being able to code. They're the hard skills, the technical skills to get you a job. But more and more important are the soft skills. So the ability to communicate, the ability to lead, teamwork, creativity, integrity, adaptability, responsibility, emotional intelligence. These are the sorts of things that are becoming more and more important in leaders and in the people that we're employing within organisations. So soft skills are really important in business. I think this is probably an old statistic now, so it's way higher than that employers are employing people on their soft skills, on all of the skills that I just described, much more so than those technical skills. To be fair, if you're going to be a surgeon, I want there to be a fair few technical skills as well, can I just say? Nevertheless. But it's important for a vast number of reasons, not the least of which is that the next generation of people going into organisation, the next generation of employees expect it. They're expecting the sorts of environments that are created by places like Google, being able to work for these big creative organisations. They're expecting that soft skills are going to be important. So there's lots of reasons why soft skills are really important in organisations. Leadership. It used to be the case that the assumption was that one was born to lead, that you're either a leader or you're not a leader. It turns out that's not true. There is a certain amount of personality that are associated that might be the difference between a good leader and a great leader. But by and large, the best predictor of leadership and quality leadership is training in leadership. What that says is that we can train leaders. So when you know that, it's about understanding how do we train leaders? What is the psychology behind good leadership? So, as I said, it used to be, we know that leadership is, to a certain degree, that doesn't work on, but that's okay. It's a consequence of the individual, the followers, and the circumstances associated with that organisation. And this is all psychology. Keep going. So, good leadership is about influencing and changing the behaviour of people. And these are all sorts of things that you learn in studying something like business psychology. Organisational change, as I said right at the very beginning, the only thing that is true about every single organisation is its ability to change. Every organisation must change in order to remain competitive.
Yeah.
It's okay. Okay, can someone move me through the slides because I'm not working anymore?
You should be on.
Are we back? Exactly. All right. So the need for change, every organisation must change. And there's lots of reasons why organisations change. They change because of external factors like COVID. They change, they pivot. I don't know, pivot was a term that was used in Singapore a lot. It was certainly used in Australia a lot. But when organisations change, majority of them will fail. So many change initiatives in organisations and businesses fail. And they fail because of poor leadership. They fail because of a lack of understanding of the psychology behind good change management, good change processes. One needs clear vision, one needs communication, motivation, strategization, all of the things that are associated with things like soft skills, the sorts of things that we teach when it comes to things like psychology. So, business psychologists in businesses create competitive advantage, and they do that by understanding the organisation itself, by understanding the people within the organisation and training the leaders in the organisation to help manage the performance within those organisations. They understand diversity, the importance of diversity, and how we implement diversity and how it works for different organisations. Business psychologists will help the leaders within that organisation listen to people within the organisation. And we do that by the Master of Business Psychology. Now, we also have a graduate certificate in business psychology, which was implemented only 2 weeks ago. Approved 2 weeks. Yes, sorry, you're right. Approved, not implemented. Approved 2 weeks ago. Where these are the sorts of subjects. I'm not going to go into all of them, but these are the sorts of subjects that we do in the Master of Business Psychology. And I'll stop there because was I on time? How about that? That must be a first time in my life.
Okay, so thank you to all our speakers, and I think, as you know, you've heard Carl talking about the strategy for 2030, and that's not that far away, really, is it? When you think about it, 7 years to do all those kinds of things, and then you'd know about the key skills strategy here in Singapore, which is picking up sort of health and caring and digitalisation. So all of those areas that we're covering in these programs, in fact, which is really crucial and important. So we will have a QA session, but I think I might just go to the next PowerPoint first. And if you would like to scan, I think this will work on here, won't it, Jason? If you're interested in any of these programs and you'd like to follow up with any of our program conveners, but we'd like to encourage you to put this up on, get your phones ready, scan the QR code, and then you'll be able to make an appointment to catch up with them, because I'm aware that we will have a Q&A session, but I'll just let you do that first. If anybody's got any comments or questions. Oh.
Perfect. Look at that.
Okay, there you go. I'm sure it's been tested by our amazing team here, so thank you for making that happen. Okay, all right. So hopefully you've got that. If you haven't, let us know. So, all right, we're as I said, we're aware that we're keeping our colleagues up. It's pretty late in Australia, but if you've got any comments or questions you'd like to raise and you want to be brave, we're very happy to hear from you. Yes, we have some. Thank you. I'm going to give you a microphone.
Thank you for coming out today and for spending your time with us, to all the speakers, so appreciate that. My questions sort of had to do with, not actually why I came today, but the policy in health. Now, I like the business side of things, but the policy sound, well, that's just not me and sounds a little dry. So in you said there were two parts. Is one more sort of more business orientated within the health field and the other more policy and government, if that's not necessarily an area that's of interest?
Okay, well, this is a question for my colleague Francesco, and so he's created the program here. But I think you'll find it quite integrated. We don't ever have any issues with students who are studying the program. But Francesco, over to you. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I think I understood it. Well, thank you. I didn't grab your name, but certainly we can go more in depth if you wish to do so. Now, the program fundamentally is constructed to serve three types of audiences, and it allows that by specializing them. So one, it's really about, as you said, the business of healthcare. So management, leadership are really key aspects of it, including financial management, decision-making, and so on. The second focus area, as you described broadly with policy, it's really about policy and economic analysis in the construction of policy, but not only from a government perspective. I make an example for you. So if you are if you work in a pharmaceutical company, and your business, of course, is to develop a drug and sell it in as many markets as you want. Typically, you would have a team that interfaces and dialogues and indeed interacts with governments, that it needs to be prepared in understanding the globally relevant reimbursement frameworks and the so-called market access. So that is what in this industry policy is also referred to. So keep that in mind, because also that is an aspect that is important. In fact, has to do a lot with what governments in fact decide to do also when designing reimbursement frameworks that are quite different and quite fundamentally impactful for the industries in pharma, but also medical devices. The last area of focus is analytics and informatics, which is where all the digital space, which is incredibly fast in growth, is mostly also developing in the exact area where you are located and surrounding. So I hope that answered your question, but more than happy to take it up later. Thanks.
We encourage you to go have a one-on-one session. I think you have some brochures, I think, in your bag that you've picked up tonight, and you can actually see that lists all of the core courses, which are the compulsory courses, and then the others which are directed where you've got some choice, and then you can look those up on the University of Newcastle website, find out more about particular courses. So anybody else like to make any comments? Maybe we'd like to hear from some of our current NFIE students who want to make a comment about your experience. Thank you. Picking on you. That's what. Is it working? That's what.
You can stand on the ground.
Maybe stand there. Okay.
Hello.
All right. So you've
I think I don't need to use my voice. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Pammer from the Master of Inclusive Special Education. So few of us is here is just to
So we actually completed the trimesters too. I think it's I can say it's an overwhelming program. We love it in terms of the lectures part, in terms of the contents of the program itself. So in fact, it's actually benefited, especially myself, because from the IHL. So I'm moving towards to special education needs where we wanted to integrate it in terms of the special disability into the society in terms of what is a better opportunity for them. So this is where I took up this master program. Apart from the rest, most of my classmates itself, they are from the special education. So basically, this program itself will allow us to have a different perspective as well. Yeah, right. I think for this program, you are decided to whatever program that you decided to certainly you will benefit some of you in terms of the learning program as well. I think it accommodates in terms of I do understand some of you are still working. So basically, the time frame for you to have a lot of the program itself, in terms of study program, the time frame is actually quite sufficient for you to complete your assignment as well. Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So I think that when some of the photographs that Carl shared of your group, obviously having the day out that you go for and lunches together and so on. So I know that you had a good experience. Okay, well, I'm aware we've just got a few minutes left. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add? If not, yeah.
Well, I have a question about the health economics.
Yeah.
Health economics policy, right? Will be more geared towards a global or towards more a Singapore policy? Because even market access is very varied across the countries. Like in Singapore and other countries are quite different, like China and Singapore. Singapore is SDR1, SDR2, and when other countries has other methods of bringing the drugs into the market. So just want to know how is program going to balance it? What's the intention? As in, will it be more focused on Singapore, or is it more focused on a global aspect?
Another question for you, Francesco.
Yeah, I am not sure I heard the full introduction, so apology if I missed something, but so what we develop in this course is a tailored approach to the Singapore settings. So keep in mind that Singapore in healthcare design and also when it comes to really its framework organization in healthcare, it's by and large been a successful experiment in one of the most developed mixed approaches to organize healthcare. So you have almost, if you want, micro versions of all healthcare systems in the world. You have a public sector, you have a very organized primary care, in fact, enhanced and strengthened strategy that looks at reinvigorating that part of the healthcare sector. But also you have initiatives that really are all targeting individual and self-care, which is something that other parts of the world are really starting experimenting only more recently. So our approach is really looking at Singapore because we think that Singaporeans have really invested a great deal of time in inspiring a lot of the innovation that is happening globally when it comes to healthcare systems design. Now, we do also have, obviously, comparative approaches in some of our healthcare systems courses, which are, in fact, aiming at thinking and rethinking and perhaps trying to learn some lessons also from experiences from other contexts and countries. I hope I understood. Again, the first part was a bit too far. But again, if you want to follow this up, I'll be more than happy to connect with you. And thanks for the question.
Francesco, I think we'd just like to say from sort of my academic director perspective that we wouldn't ever just focus just on one country. I mean, we'd want to take a global, if you think of an inverted triangle, what's happening in the world, because it would be very narrow if we just narrowed to one particular area, just in that part of the triangle. But we do, because we employ local lecturers as well as our staff who come over and teach here, we do get that contextualization as well. And we want to local case studies because otherwise it's not going to be relevant to people studying the programs here, if that helps to answer that question. Okay. All right. Well, I'm aware that obviously we've kept you up very late here, our colleagues here in Australia. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to them. A big thank you to our team, particularly our marketing team here supporting the program, our speakers tonight, and all of you for coming along. So I hope you can spend a little bit of time, because we do have food and drink out here, which has hardly been touched. Sorry that you just have to consider that virtually, those of you in Australia. But we'd like to encourage you to network with us and enjoy the rest of the evening. So thank you so much again.